Welcome to the Alain Elkann interviews, an unprecedented window into the minds of some of the most well-known and respected figures of the last 25 years.
How long did it take to write? How many pages there are in English? 1,200 pages. It must have been a long work.
It has been a long work, and it took something like 9 years, but I must be sincere, I didn't work for 9 years. I started and finished. I started in 2006 and I finished in 2015. But then in the middle of this period, I had like 3 or 4 years in which I was completely stuck. And I thought that the book was over. I was over. The book was not over, but I was exhausted and I didn't find a way to finish. Then I think in 2012 or something like that, the publisher Rizzoli went to my house. The people who are working in the narrative in fiction section of the publisher, and asked me if I had a book to publish with them. So I told them that yes, possibly there was something I was working on for years, but I was not able to finish it, and they encouraged me and helped me and supported me and pushed me and everything that a publisher can do for having an author finishing his work. And so in the last 2 years, I put all my energies in finishing it and sending, and it was 1,500 pages, the first version of it. Then I cut away some. Well, they were quite scared when they received it. So after having called me and phoned me and mailed me for weeks, they disappeared. They didn't. There was a blackout during which they were reading the book or trying to read it. And then they called me with the good news that it was possible, physically possible. They asked for a technical point of view, and it was possible to do a book like that. So I had just to cut what it was not good, not to make it not to make it shorter, but just to cut away the useless part of it.
They wanted an editing, or you made self-editing before?
I was helped by 2 people in editing it. One is my daughter, and the other one was the editor of Rizzoli, of the narrative section. And I double-crossed their suggestions, and when both suggested me to cut away some pages or to rewrite some passages, I did. When it was just my daughter, I believed my daughter. When it was just the professional reader, I didn't.
But obviously this huge book has been a case, right? Because there are not many books like this coming out nowhere, right? Is it like War and Peace, like that kind of very, very long book? But you knew it would be a long book?
No, when I started, I think it would have been a long book, meaning like 400, 500 pages, so a long novel, but not this.
How does one handle a book of this size? How can you remember what you wrote at page 10 when you are at page 972?
That's why I got lost after a few years. But then I copied. Let's say I used an example, something I physically saw on the wall of the director Matteo Garrone, with which I wrote a script, a film. And
Which film did you write?
The Tale of Tales. And to write this film and to write all his other films and then to edit the film, he used a very large panel with transparent pockets in which he put some piece of colored cardboard with different colors to follow the different lines of the stories of the film. And so I did the same I had my daughters, both of them helped me to build this with 200 of these plastic pockets. And then I had 4 main lines of the book, my main themes of the book. So I started to write on this piece of paper.
When you mean paper. Write, you move your hand. You were handwriting?
Yeah, handwriting, and then see if there was, almost visually, some sort of coherence in the stories.
But after all, this book, some critics said that this book is a masterpiece and that you are a great writer, right? And it's a great novel. Some others said it's not a novel, it's not an essay.
It's not a masterpiece.
And others said, why did he make such a long book? You know, I mean, it was obviously discussed, right? I mean, he also then had a very prestigious award, the Strega Award, which is the most important Italian literary award. What is it? An historical novel? It is.
Well, it's an historical novel just because something that happened just 40 years ago is history.
40 years ago, you mean the murder in Circeo?
Yeah, that it was in 75, so now 44 years ago. You don't have to go back to the Middle Age or to Renaissance to write a historical novel because life and society and Italy, in this case, or Rome, changed so rapidly that after 20 years, after one generation, all the world you are talking about doesn't exist anymore.
Why? Because things go very fast?
No, just because the way people live changes. For instance, the families, the way of family life in Italy of the 60s, of the 70s, is something that is closer to the 18th century than to our contemporary life. So, and I think the beauty of the novel is that you are always describing or talking or maybe sometimes inventing sometimes that maybe once existed, but now it doesn't exist anymore. So I think it's a novel simply because since the beginning of this literary genre, the novel is a hybrid. It's not lyric, it's not theater, it's not philosophy. It's something that mixes all these things together from the beginning. So in a way, I feel authorized to do the same thing, maybe enlarging and with the contribution of the larger than these novels of the 20th century, like the Musils or Proust. Or
let's say War and Peace is Napoleon, the war, and blah, 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 but it's also the story of a family and of a society where there are all sorts of things happening, also because of history, right?
Yeah.
Here, if I'm not wrong, is the story of the Catholic school was a real school where you went, right? And there were some of the people, the children, the boys who were in school with you, who were part of this crime. No? So this is the story of a generation and an historical fact, right?
I don't know if Piccolo ever wrote that this is a masterpiece. I tend to think that he didn't. And nobody could write this, and not me believing it. While War and Peace is a masterpiece. That's the main difference, not of genre, but of level, of quality. Yeah. Tolstoy is one of... I think it was Enzensberger who said that with Shakespeare, Tolstoy, Dante, we should not compare. With all the others, we can try to deal with colleagues, while Tolstoy is not a colleague; it's a genius. I'm joking about this fact, but the comparison has been done.
There is a story, right? There is a story of a group of people, and then many stories develop.
Yeah,
right? There is everything: family, love.
There are many stories in the book, and there is one voice that is the narrator, that is me, partially me. It's not autobiographically me. So many of the things I said I've done, or I felt, or I saw, actually I didn't felt, so and done.
You invented them.
I corrected, I edited, I partially invented, partially I was inspired by other people like me who did. So I think I can steal the things, or I can borrow the things I did. So I can. The only funny things in writing is this: that you are free to use life your own and the others and the life of fantasy with as material, as a pure
Fictional material.
yeah, fictional material, even if it's true, even if it's cruelly true.
Yeah, because you make it slightly different.
I just give you the example of the one of the main characters of the book, that is the genial schoolmate, Arbus. Actually, he is inspired, or more than inspired, to a real schoolmate I had when I was in school. Actually, I didn't see this guy for 40 years and I never knew anything about him. And then he read the book and he wrote me. And actually, everything I wrote about him after he left school, I left school, so we didn't meet, I completely invented.
What did you invent?
Well, something that I wouldn't like to spoil the reading, but we discovered that Arbus go through a series of experience. Some of them are close to madness, or because he's a pyromaniac, is someone who is arrested because he's touching the bottom of the ladies in the buses and things like this. When he read the book, I thought he could have been ashamed or scandalized or angry with me, and he liked that. And that's why I think I was right saying that he's a genius, because he's open, completely open.
Then you have a real murderer among your characters. No?
Yeah, but this is something, the only thing I didn't touch at all. There were three: Angelo Izzo, Gianni Guido, Ghira. I used the name of Angelo, and the other two, I changed the name because I could not write their names. So I called Gianni Guido Subdued, because during the first trial, his lawyers tried to demonstrate that he was subdued by the other two. He was subjugated by the other two strong personalities. Andrea Ghira, I called him in the book Il Legionario, because apparently, or definitely, has been decided in two different trials, he died as a soldier of the Foreign Legion in Morocco, in the Spanish Foreign Legion, and he is buried in Melilla, who is in Morocco, but he is a Spanish enclave with another name, but the body that is in this grave apparently is his. So I called him Il Legionario. Everything I write about them and about the victims is what really happened, and I took the information from the trials, from the verbals of police, from the transcriptions. So this is something I didn't dare to change or to novelize or whatever.
But have you seen Izzo after the second murder?
Not at all. I'm not Truman Capote, unfortunately. I didn't follow this path of having information, meet, talk, interview.
Somebody has said, this is a very masculine book.
I want to recreate the climate of this period, and in this period, not only in that, but in the 70s, the feminism was probably the most relevant kind of thinking and making politics, because it's the political movement of the 20th century, I think. At the end of it, while all the others failed, all the others disappeared.
Feminism remains.
Feminism remains because it's still completely alive and actual in all the countries of the world, and some of them is the main one.
What feminism has to do with the story of the book?
The feminist movement was the first in history in which someone started to think about the gender as different from the human being as such. After the feminism, after women wrote about being a woman, in the 80s, they started to think that you had to do the same thing with males. So there is not just man as the individual or the human being or the subject of philosophy, but there is the male. What are the characteristics of a boy? What are the feeling? What are the real feeling? Not the feeling that we suppose that he had to feel to be a man, to be a boy and then become a man. What is the intimate nature of a boy? You can discover it. You can think of it. We can narrate about that if you, like me, go inside an all-male school, like the Catholic school was.
Catholic school is the name of the school,
Yeah.
or the book has to do
No,
with
it's
the
that
Catholic
school.
education?
Was
What happens in the book is a consequence of a Catholic
No,
education.
nothing happens for one reason in life. There is never one and only reason for that.
Reasons to
There are many reasons. There is a sort of carpet that is knitted with at least 10 different threads with different colors. The Catholic school is the school in which I studied. It was a Catholic school.
in
But
the sense that there were priests teaching.
you know, if we were talking in Italian, I would say that the former title was La Scuola dei Preti. Because in Italian, when you ask somebody, where did you study? I studied, io ho studiato dai preti.
Sì.
Ma la scuola dei preti, but the school of priests, could have been mistaken or sounded as the seminar. So where the priests study, not where boys are educated by priests. That is our case.
Yeah, but it's quite a statement, right? Because it's not the Christian school
No, Catholic.
or the religious school,
No.
it's the Catholic.
To a foreigner public, you have to specify that in Italy, the public school, the paying school, was only Catholic. So it's the same. It's a sort of synonym in Italy. Among the three issues of this school, I think that the first and most important was that it was an all-male school. The second one that was a paying school, so just for well-off families, or at least families who can afford to pay for the studies of the children.
Criminal or kind of criminal boys come from bourgeoisie, and so this is not the Pasolini type of world.
This crime, Delitto del Circeo, showed for the first time the fact that this kind of things like rape and murder, they are not, let's say, confined in the slums but it's something that can happen everywhere, can be done by everybody. So they are not safe areas of the society. And since the neighborhood in which this school was built, and we went there, and almost all the students of this school came up from the same area, that is called Quartiere Trieste, that is one of the main characters of the book. The neighborhood, Quartiere Trieste, was considered, well, with many a reason, as a safe place, where nothing serious, nothing dramatic, nothing criminal could happen. Not my book, but the crime in itself.
You needed so many pages to tell this story. Why? Because there are too many details, because you want to say everything.
The book covers many different issues and stories, and had a lot of characters. I felt obliged to go through in my research, and like asking the reader to follow me in the same research of what it means, first, to be male, second, to be bourgeois, third, to be Roman Catholic, living in the 70s and looking for truth, sex, religion, violence. Violence at a certain point of the book, around page 600 to page 900, I just go through, especially sexual violence, but not only, as one of the main feature of human being in general, of male identity, how male identity has been built for centuries on this idea of having to use force and violence to, let's say, to compensate what I think is a natural fragility of the male nature. So how men started, they go on, using violence to overcome their own impotence, their own fragility.
Trump is not a character of your book.
I don't think he will never be a character of a book, because you cannot make a parody of a parody.
At the end of the day, this book is a pessimistic book, is an optimistic book. There is hope.
The last line of the book says, one song after the other, the Christmas Mass at San Leone Magno was drawing to its close, and my heart finally overflowed with joy.
You were afraid to publish such a big book? Because you wrote many others, and you wrote after some others, but they are shorter, obviously. How does one feel? How did you feel as a writer when you finished such book? Completely empty, or
I was exhausted, lost, depressed, empty, and I had to recover for months, and I was helped by pills in this, by friends, by love, by other people. And so I reached, after 3-4 months, I finished the book, I reached the perfect indifference. So I didn't care anymore about the book, about the prize. It was very funny because this book went to this, probably the most important award, literary award in Italy, and there is a sort of fight and battle among publishers, writers, and so it's something that is lived with a lot of passion and politics and almost in a furious way. And I was like Buddha, completely because of the pills, not because of me. So I went through it, and I was very happy because my publisher was happy, my fiancée was happy, my daughter. So I saw joy and satisfaction and enthusiasm in others, but I was completely out. And that was very good.
But you have the feeling that in this book you really went deep into yourself.
I cannot go deeper than this, I think. Because if I go deeper than this, I go underground.
This is a very Italian book in a way.
No, it's a very Roman book. It has nothing to do with Italy. Rome is not Italy. Rome is Rome. Catholicism is Italian. No. The emperor were Romans. No. Rome is not only the capital of Italy. It's the town of God. It's the town of beauty.
Yourself, you are a Catholic writer, or you know, I mean, in the French, for instance, literature, they say he's a Catholic writer.
Yeah. But to be a Catholic writer, first you have to believe in God, I think.
And you don't?
I don't know. I'm not a believer. I don't think that he doesn't exist. I don't think he exists. I describe that in the book quite, I think, deeply, the fact of not having faith. I never had it. When I was in the Catholic Society, I followed the rules. I tried hard to believe.
So you would like to have a faith?
Everybody.
But by writing this, you didn't find a faith?
Since we were quoting Tolstoy, I quote Dostoevsky. There is a wonderful line in The Demons in which there is somebody asking to someone else, do you believe in God? And the answer is, I will believe.
So you will believe. And you believe in literature? You are teaching in a school inside a jail, right?
You know the song of John Lennon, I don't believe in this, I don't believe in that. I'm quite of that school. I don't believe in literature now. I like literature.
But you are a professor. You teach since many years, 20 and more years in the jail.
Yes, but I want to make a difference between liking and believing. I don't think that literature is going to change things, to free people, to make people better, but I like it. And so I can say, yes, I like literature, I love literature, but I don't believe in literature.
You dedicated your award to a poet, Valentino Zaiken.
Yeah.
Therefore, you obviously like poets and poetry. Mm-hmm. You wrote for the cinema. You wrote essays about your experiences in Afghanistan and in Chad. Which is the genre that you like the best? To be a novelist, to be an essayist?
I like literature in all its aspects, so I like all this genre. I can try to do something in these different fields. I don't think, and actually my bibliography says that I am not a novelist, as Alberto Moravia. I'm a narrator. A novel is a large book with a plot and with characters that do something at the beginning, at the end they are different. A narrator is somebody who follows the stories. And sometimes also the essayism is a story, because it's a story of somebody who wants to go through a topic and to discover things about human life or other things, and it's the narration of your own discovery. So I think that This book, for instance, is for sure a journey. During this journey, you will hear stories. It's like making quite similar to life. So if you go to Spain for 1 month, you will eat, sleep, see churches, bathe, think, love, have sex, have other things. And that's the same thing. At the end of it, you will have done many different things. But the journey is one. So the book is one. And it goes through different areas in which, in some of them, you listen to the story of these
But there is an
schoolboys.
end in your book or no end? Like in a novel.
The end of the book is the last page you turn.
How is it to be an Italian writer?
To be an Italian writer probably means at the same time to be very almost oppressed and burned by an enormous treasure of our own language, of our own tradition, of the fact that our literature started great from the beginning. So nobody will never, as Berger was saying, nobody will ever compare with Dante and Petrarca. So we are always, our sentence is to be minors compared to, and that's for sure. Italy, I think it's a very interesting place to write about, because it's a place in which you can have all the kind of experiments in life, in love, and in politics. So it's a lively place, even if it's not the center of the world.
In a world where English is the Latin of our times, the Esperanto of the world.
Well, we are here just in front of the proof that an English or an American publisher is interested in something written in this language and talking about dirty action happened 40 years ago in Italy. So I think that this is the proof that something interesting for other countries, other readers, and especially after the great success of the Neapolitan novels, I think that forever we are free. We all are free. The unknown lady, Elena Ferrante, she opened our faith in being read and understood, and that somebody could be interested in our stuff.
Do you recognize yourself a maestro, or you became a writer? You were a school of, a few writers together, or you had an example in front of you, or were you
No, I did everything by myself, always, in this field. I was a spoiled boy from an economical point of view, so I was helped by my family, so I had an easy life compared to others. But in literature, what I did, writing, it's something I did by myself, and no masters, no university, no models, no ideals, nothing.
You don't believe in schools of writing or things like this?
I cannot say I don't believe. I don't care.
And after such a book, the new books, is it easy to write? When you wrote such a statement, do you still write all the time, every day?
I try not to be finished as a writer, but I'm more worried for readers, not for me. Once they read this, they could have enough of Albinati for the rest of their life. So this is quite worrying. There is another long, but in parts, so in different volumes. I publish one, and then I will publish the sequel. So at the end, maybe there will be something like this. Another big. But first, I'm going to publish it in different volumes. Second, as I told you, the main problem could be that the people who didn't like this will never read. And the people who like this had enough.
In this book, you talk to the reader. You say, I'm sorry, but you will have to do this, or I have another. You dialogue. The narrator in the book dialogue with the reader.
This happened because in this form, in this time of writing, in this length, I felt for the first time, maybe the last, a sort of common path with the reader, that we were sharing an experience. So I had to encourage or to to heal, to help, or to avoid, to suggest sometimes to skip pages that could be too hard or too cruel or too graphic for the reader. And so talking with him, her, or whoever it is, because the reader is the most unknown. This sentence that is in a letter that Flannery O'Connor wrote to a friend, describing her own work, the fact of having spent 2-3 hours or 4 hours writing. She says something like that, and then I stopped because I was fed up of talking about no one to no one. You are talking to characters that don't exist, and you're talking about them to people, the reader. You will never know who they are, if ever they will exist.
We are in London, in the Italian Institute of Culture. We just had a conversation, an interview, whatever we want to call, with Edoardo Albinati, who just published The Catholic School, published in England by Picador. Our best wishes for great success also in the English language.
Alain Elkann interviews.